Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Lovely to see you and welcome to the first of our 3 live sessions, accelerating the achievements of the EU Nature Restoration Goals through life. I know many of you are familiar with the programme and probably many of you are also programme participants. But just to set the scene a little bit, we've adopted a slogan of bigger, better, faster. So where does that come from? We've adopted this in recognition of the Lawton principles of ecological restoration that were established and widespread in 2012 and are still very relevant today. Bigger because we need to upscale, better because we need to do things better, and faster is the one that we've added because there is a need to accelerate what we are doing. In the Lawton Principles originally, we had joined up as well. So connectivity, both in terms of habitat connectivity and interconnected people, are also hugely important. And you will see that they are reflected in all of our projects that are going to be speaking today. We've got 6 speakers for you lined up, and there they are, all happy on the board there. And I would just like to tell you that sadly, tomorrow's final session in the afternoon, one of our speakers has been unable to attend due to personal reasons, and we sincerely hope that if Serena from the Life Granatha project is listening, we wish her well. But that's opened up a slot, so if there's no time for questions and answers in any of the sessions today, we will be opening that slot up tomorrow afternoon for a larger Q&A session. So fear not, your questions will be answered. So without further ado, I'm going to, hopefully, yes, there we go. I'm going to introduce, we're delighted to have with us today, Maja Mikosinska from the EU SERE, which is, for most of you that know this programme, know that this is the agency that manages the LIFE programme. She's the deputy head of the unit Life Environment, and she's going to open our session for us and give us a bit of background about our programme. Maja, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Lynn. Good morning, everybody. Thanks. It's my pleasure to be here. I was told life requires no introduction in this crowd, but just to be sure, just for the record, life is the funding instrument of the European Union dedicated to environment and climate action. And since its conception in 1992, it financed more than 6,000 projects that benefit our nature, environment, climate action, and since 2021, also clean energy transition. So that's in terms of the introduction. Now about myself, yes, my name is Maja Mikosinska. I have a pleasure and a real privilege to work on life for more than 10 years now. And, I joined the LIFE team in the European Commission back in 2012, having worked for 5 years on a completely different policy area. And everything I knew back then about life was life regulation, of course, life multi-annual work program, and environmental policies. So I was very well equipped to do the job of the project officer that I was assigned to do. But I didn't know the essence of life. I didn't know what makes life, life, and what makes it one of the most impactful financial instruments that I know. But luckily, I learned that very fast. As it happened, I joined in May 2012. And those of you familiar with the LIFE program, you probably know that every May, for several years now, we celebrate LIFE Awards. For those of you who don't know what LIFE Awards are, well, these are like Oscars, only better. Every year we celebrate LIFE projects that finished the year before and that achieved particularly spectacular results. So in my first week on this new job, I went to the Life Awards, and that changed my perspective on my work forever. There are three things that stuck with me that I've seen that day. Well, first of all, it was, of course, the enthusiasm of my colleagues and the pride of the Life laureates. And that already was a hint that this is a very special community, Life beneficiaries. But there are also three other important things. Well, first of all, there was a project that was awarded the title Best of the Best that year. And it was a project that was targeting the conservation of Bombina bombina in its entire northern range in Germany, Latvia, Sweden, and Denmark. And just to hear about this project directly from the project beneficiaries was incredible. It was truly a great project. It contained a very strong capacity building element. Several good practices were transferred between the countries. It also resulted with, it kickstarted a broader amphibian conservation program in Latvia, so it had this snowball effect. It also resulted with changes in the legislation in Germany that was favorable for the toad conservation, not conversation, conservation, and those changes were inspired by the existing legislative solutions that were at that point in Denmark. So it was a beautiful example of the cooperation and exchange between the European countries, and all of it came on top of the concrete conservation result for Bombina bombina. So, in other words, what I've seen in that very first week of my Work for Life program was impact, a very concrete, measurable impact in terms of conservation, but also a lot of solidarity and exchange and knowledge traveling around. Second thing that struck me was the thank you message from one of the laureates, and unfortunately I do not remember what was the environmental program that his project worked on, but I remember very well what he said. He said it was very difficult to implement LIFE project. It came with challenges, and I'm sure many of you working on LIFE know that better than me, that it's not an easy job. But then he said, you know, it was difficult, but we did it, and now we don't have to worry about it, and our children will not have to worry about it. And, you know, as I mentioned, I came to LIFE working on a completely different policy area with this kind of sustainability that could last possibly for 2 generations, could not, for very objective reasons, be guaranteed. So to hear that at least some of our projects can deliver or can dream about delivering this kind of long-term impact truly resonated with me and was very inspiring. And then the third thing that I learned about LIFE that day was linked to a quote competition, because in 2012 we have celebrated 20-year anniversary of LIFE. Now LIFE is more than 30 years old, but back then it was 20-year anniversary. And there was a quote competition. So LIFE beneficiaries were asked to submit a quote, and the best quotes were presented to the audience. And there was one that really stuck with me, perhaps because it was written in my native Polish and it was prepared by the beneficiaries from the Biebrze National Park, or perhaps because it said something about the LIFE community. And the quote read as follows: "Life is more than a fund. It's a philosophy that connects people and nature. The impossible becomes possible." The impossible becomes possible. In the years that came, I understood that it was, in fact, the credit to LIFE beneficiaries and their ambition. And this quote is still hanging in my office 12 years later, and is a reminder of what the LIFE community can achieve. So, impact, sustainability, and this can-do attitude of the LIFE beneficiaries are, for me, the trademarks of the LIFE program. And in my opinion, this is what makes LIFE program a success that it is today. And what is impressive about LIFE is the cumulative impact of the projects and the initiatives that tend to mushroom around it. Again, not by magic, but I think by the engagement of the LIFE community. And we have many examples of of the impact of the LIFE program, and we have even an excellent report that you can pick up in the LIFE stand outside. LIFE makes bringing nature back to life. So I will not summarize this report, but let me share some examples of what we have achieved together in those 30 years. So several species have been safeguarded from extinction, either locally at the European level. And the program has been particularly successful in recovering populations, for instance, of birds of prey, such as bearded vulture. And while today the species occupies only a small percentage of its former range, in Pyrenees, Sierra Nevada, Alpine mountain ranges, Corsica and Crete, the population in Western Europe is increasing. And to a large extent, it is thanks to the transnational cooperation of many dedicated actors in many countries where the species exists. But I'm proud to admit that LIFE played a role here in supporting a series of projects that made this cooperation possible. Another example is aquatic wobbler that also benefited from a series of LIFE projects. And it all started with rather small, unconnected projects in Poland and Lithuania. But there was a measurable, noticeable improvement in the conservation status of the species, as all those projects worked on the habitat restoration. And today, what happens today, we support yet another project that is benefiting migratory species, including aquatic wobbler, and that is working on restoring their resting places along the highway and in the wintering grounds in Rwanda and Senegal. So once again, what started with a rather small local project grew now into a bigger initiative that addresses the threats for the species outside the EU. And it was the LIFE beneficiaries that proposed to work on that, because LIFE is a bottom-up approach type of program. So since they did, here we are working outside the EU for the species. Peatland restoration is another example. So far, more than 360 projects targeting conservation and restoration of peatlands have been financed by LIFE, targeting the 13 types of raised bogs, mires, fence, etc. And due to a very slow growth of peat layers, the real success of those amazing projects will be enjoyed only by the future generations. Nevertheless, we have the first signs of positive trends that can be already seen in United Kingdom, Poland, Belgium, Denmark. And it goes without saying that it was the LIFE projects that played a key role in the restoration of peatlands. But what I like about this group of the projects in particular is that over the years they have built a substantial knowledge, know-how, developed new best practices, and that these knowledge and solutions for the challenges in peatland restorations have been shared. And once again, LIFE is bigger than the single project or the series of projects. It spreads with its results beyond those. And I think it's important to acknowledge that this is impressive, also considering that LIFE budget is a relatively small one within the EU budget. It's not definitely the biggest funding program that we have. In my experience, the ambition of the LIFE projects and the LIFE program is growing. We see it in the geographical size of the proposed projects and also in the budgets. The budgets are growing. But it is not to say that there is no space for the small local projects in LIFE, because there is. And LIFE focus has always been the implementation of EU nature and biodiversity policies. You all know that there is no LIFE without birds and habitats directives and invasive alien species regulation. But LIFE is, of course, supporting also other priorities. EU biodiversity strategy is central also these days to life funding mechanisms, including but not limited to increasing the share of EU land and marine area under protection and strict protection, as well as implementing EU nature restoration targets for species and habitats. So LIFE is already very well placed to support the implementation of the nature restoration law. It's included in its funding priorities. So we are ready. We just need the good ideas from the LIFE community and LIFE beneficiaries to move forward. So to conclude, I would say that LIFE is only as strong as its beneficiaries. So please stay strong. And if you are not yet a LIFE beneficiary, but you are working on nature conservation and restoration in the EU or in the countries associated to the LIFE program, which for the record include Iceland, Ukraine, Moldova, and North Macedonia, please consider applying and joining this amazing community. I look forward to today's session, and I am really looking forward to hearing about your life stories. Thank you. Sorry.
Okay, we've got a chance for a couple of questions. If anybody, thanks for the timer. Anybody got any questions for Maya? She's going to be here for the next 2 days, so if you've got questions, please find her and speak with her. That'll be great. Okay, no questions immediately, Maya? You're off the hook.
Thank you.
I just wanted to mention the publication that Maya mentioned there, which is the Bringing Nature Back Through Life. Sadly, we have run out of all of our copies. However, the good news is, if you pick up a postcard off the front desk, it has a QR code on it. Go to the QR code, you can download it directly from the LIFE website. It is an excellent publication. So, on to our next speaker, Reinhard. So, Reinhard Strube is from the LIFE, do we say Junias or June IAS?
Junias, we say.
Junias, okay. And this is about dune restoration in Flemish N2K sites by tackling invasive alien species.
Thank you for the very nice introduction. I'm indeed Reinhard. I work for the Agency for Nature and Forests in Belgium. And I'm gonna give this talk about LIFE Junias, in which we tackle invasive alien species in our beautiful Flemish dunes, which I will show on the next slide. So you see we have a lot of very nice and beautiful protected habitat types in Flanders. You can see our beautiful dune grasslands. We have shifting dunes. We have humid dune slacks with a lot of orchids, which are all the pink dots you can see. That's Dactylorhiza incarnata, sea buckthorn scrub, and so on. And in these habitat types, we have a lot of nice and beautiful species. For instance, the natterjack toad, which is protected on a European scale, Queen of Spain fritillary, and so on. Our beautiful tree frog, dune pansy, the grayling, that butterfly over there. So I think you are convinced by now, I hope, that our dunes are beautiful hotspots for biodiversity. Also, a lot of these species we find there are on local or regional red lists. So dunes are really hotspots, but unfortunately, and here I come, our dunes are under threat, for instance, by invasive alien species. You can see the Rosa rugosa on this slide, which is a shrub from Southeast Asia. And as you can see, it's quite invasive. It just overgrows hectares of dunes. And it's not the only species. We have identified more than 50 of these scrub species in our dunes. As you can see, it's quite monotonous. Maybe we can find 5 other species, but sunlight just can't penetrate this dense scrub layer and everything disappears. So that's a big problem for our beautiful dunes. But luckily for us, the LIFE Junias project got approved. So from 2021 till the end of 2026, we can tackle these invasive alien species in our dunes. So how does this pointer work? Oh, Yeah, I won't do it. So everything in black, encircled in black, is our project area. So yeah, it's all our dunes to say, and all the red colors are invasive alien species. So I think it's quite clear. In every dune we have invasive alien species. There simply ain't a dune without them. But we were quite lucky to convince all big dune managers and owners to participate in our project. So in this way we can tackle these invasive alien species in an area covering way, and that's very important for to tackle these guys in an area covering way, because if you leave one standing on site, it will spread again, and yeah, I think you all know that story. Yeah, that's just to show how it looks on site. So on the left we have a totally encroached dune landscape with Rosa rugosa. Everything from our nice species that I have shown on the first slide has disappeared in this landscape. But luckily, after we went there with our big excavators, I will tell some more about these excavators in one of the next slides. Then you can see we have a dune again. We can see the sand again. And we see already some nice plants emerging from the sand. The green dots, it's Caecilium maritima. It's a sea rocket that's emerging again. Some nice species, sea spurge, on which we have the sea spurge hawk moths. It's a nice butterfly that flies in the evening. Sea rockets that you can see emerging, very interesting for bees and butterflies and so on. And that's how we do it. So basically we dig with an excavator till a certain depth. It depends on the species. After which we sieve the material, so the sand gets deposited in the dunes again. But the invasive alien species material, we remove to a decomposer. So for instance, for Fallopia japonica, which is a very difficult shrub to remove, we dig till a depth of 2 meters. We know the roots grow very deep. For Rosa rugosa, it's 1 meter and so on. You can contact me in the pose if you want some extra additional information about one of these species. Also very important, rooting depth depends on the soil type. For instance, when you have Rosa rugosa on a sandy soil, it will grow till a depth of 1 meter, but in a clay soil, it will only grow till a depth of 40 or 50 centimeters. So very important, the soil depth affects the rooting depth. Follow-up management, also very important. Don't just tackle it once, but go back to the site. For at least 2 years we do it. Of course, not always with these big machines. When we go back, we just do it with a spade. It are tiny pieces left, because every tiny piece of root that escapes our excavator or sieve can regrow to a new plant. So that's a big issue. And also important, take a buffer zone around the invasive alien species. So don't just dig where you see the plant, but dig 2 meters farther, because the roots also grow underground, of course. That's a very interesting technique that we used this year and last year. It's called the star sieve. So here the sieve is immediately integrated in the bucket of the excavator. So the bucket digs till a certain depth, and then all these yellow things you can see here, it's a kind of a sieving device integrated in the bucket. The yellow things are turning around. The sand goes through it, but the roots just stay in the bucket, and we can remove it. It goes quite fast, this technique. And tackling invasive alien species, that's not the only thing we do. We are also sensitizing people about our project, about the problem of invasive alien species. Policymakers, of course, is a very important target audience for us. So we made a charter in which is indicated that coastal municipalities will stop planting invasive alien species, will remove invasive alien species on their territory, will help communicate about invasive alien species, and so on. So by now, already 2 municipalities have signed this charter, and of course we hope that they will all sign it. We are also giving personal advice, as you can see here. So we give advice about plants growing in their parks, how to remove it, which endemic species they can plant instead, and so on. And we are giving an award to all municipalities working together with us, which is an endemic tree with an information sign. And we are also coupling some media attention to it in order to stimulate other municipalities to do this. Then the professional green sector, also very important. A lot of these plants are still sold in a lot of shops. So we are in contact with a lot of with some trade federations. We are publicating a lot of articles in their trade magazines, so their members are sensitized about the problem of invasive alien species. We are also giving personal advice to garden centers where these species are still sold. We also hope that garden centers remove species from their assortment. For instance, last week I went to a very big garden center at our coast, and the owner was prepared to remove Rosa rugosa and Mahonia acifolium. So that's very interesting for us. Also, guest lectures are important. We are giving guest lectures to students, horticulture, for instance, but also to garden contractors. So we tell them about the threat of invasive alien species, how you should remove them, how you dig them out, which endemic plants you can plant instead, and so on. Private gardeners, also a very important target audience. I think we all know it, gardens bordering nature reserves, they are sometimes a problem because plants can just escape over or under the fence. So we are visiting every house bordering our dune. That are 1,000 houses. We are just personally visiting them and telling them about the threat of invasive alien species. We also are giving them free and personal advice. So we look which species we find in their gardens. Then we tell them if you do nothing, for instance, Rosa rugosa, it can spread 1 meter per year. So if you do nothing, your garden will simply just be encroached in 10 years. Then we give advice which plants they can put instead in the garden and so on. So by now we have visited more than 100 gardens, and we will continue to do this till the end of our project. We also improved an existing early warning system for the Dutch-speaking guys, waarneming.be. It's the equivalent of observation.org. So we added some recognition fishes. We added extra information about how to recognize invasive alien species. We also added invasive alien species challenges to the app Ops-Identify for those of you who know it. So you can take a picture of a plant or of an animal, and the app says which plant or animal it is. So with these challenges, we stimulate people to enter as much invasive alien species as possible. What is of course very interesting for us as managers, because people enter these observations and then we get a notification where the plant is entered. Also, new species are added to this database based on a horizon scan we performed with experts from all over Europe. So we looked which plants can become invasive in the future based on global warming and so on. It's a very interesting report, more than 200 pages. It's free to download online. It's in English. You can take a picture of the last slide, on which is my email address. I can send it to the people who are interested in this report. So all these things lead to a better detection of invasive alien species in our dunes, which is of course very interesting for us as a dune manager. Some experiences up till now. We have a lot of war heritage. We have the Atlantic Wall, a lot of German relics. We have bunkers. We have some bombshells. Unfortunately, that costs us a lot. We have to do a lot of studies to see where these bastards are situated in the ground, because we don't want our excavators to explode. We don't have the money for that. But it costs us a lot of money, hundreds of thousands of euros. We didn't foresee because of these bombshells, but it happens. At least 10% of invasive alien species is missed when mapping. I will show that on the next slide. And the project is well received till now, so that's very good for us. We didn't have a lot of protest till now. So that's what I just told about mapping. I will try the pointer. So here you see Rosa rugosa. So you would think it only grows here. It's the light green shrub. But when the contractor goes on site, it seems that the plant is way bigger than we first thought, because a lot of small plants just grow underneath sea buckthorn. So it's impossible for us to find them all. So and that's quite a big issue for us. So we thought it was some square meters, but in fact it's some 100 square meters. So that's a big price for us indeed. It's quite impossible. We do it with a handheld GPS. We go in the field. but it's impossible to go in this dense thicket with a lot of thorns. So that's something we learned. Maybe drones might help us with that. But of course, if they grow under shrubs, it's also impossible to do. And this is already my last slide, some policy recommendations. So yeah, I could say read it for yourself, but I won't. I will read it for you. So compulsory eradication measures for union list species are very vague. I think you know the union list, which indicates some species that cannot be sold, cannot be handled, and so on. But for us, it's quite vague. There are no really indications that you should remove it on site. So that's quite vague. More support for the elaboration of local invasive alien species lists. For instance, Rosa rugosa, Mahonia acifolium, and so on. They are not on a European blacklist, so it would be good to make some local lists for these species, because it's not only in Belgium an issue, it's everywhere in Europe. We see Rosa rugosa. I saw it here on Saaremaa. I saw it close to Tallinn. So I think it's also an issue in Estonia, these species. Rapid response is very important, so more collaboration between countries is needed. If you find an invasive species, tell it to the neighboring country if it's close to a border. Exchange of best practices is also super important. We learned a lot from other countries. You have this very nice dune network with people from the UK, from Denmark, from the Netherlands, from Germany. So it's super interesting to hear their experiences, but also to exchange our experiences so they can learn from us. And as I have shown on my first slide, coastal dunes, they are quite small, but they have a lot of protected and nice plants and animals. So it would be nice if we can further support initiatives to protect our beautiful dunes. So this was my presentation. Thank you for the attention.
I think we might have time for one question. Okay, have we got one question for Reinhard? No? Yeah, we've got one there. Thank you. Okay.
Great speech. I have one question about soil seed bank. How are you dealing with that?
Yeah, of course. We can't remove all the seeds from the soil from invasive alien species. That's why you need to get back on site. So with the excavator, we are mainly removing the roots. These are most persistent. But for instance, Rosa rugosa also has tiny seeds in these bottles. But they might germinate the year after. But for us, it's easy to remove just with a shovel because they don't grow very deep these first years. So that's how we do it, just with this aftercare. And of course, you have a lot of seeds from endemic plants in the seed bank, which is very interesting for us. For instance, the dune pansy and so on.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Sadly, we have no more time for questions, but do catch Reinhard. I love the war heritage. We call it unexploded ordnance. Yeah. Okay, our next speakers, we have two of them, and it's Candice Cornet and Mathilde Mollica from the French project Reverso. Okay, ladies, thank you. Please take the podium. And we're recovering good ecological status of water bodies in the Pays de la Loire region. Yeah? Thank you. Ladies, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. So we represent the Life IP Reverso. Fine? Carry on. Okay. From France, whom aim is to contribute to the restoration of water quality in the Pays de la Loire region. We are very pleased to participate in this special live session, and we thank SERE and Element for their support and their interest in our project. So first we will give a quick introduction, giving an overview of our project, and then we will focus on certain aspects that are particularly worth sharing here. And we will conclude with the main relevant lessons that we have learned so far from our project experience. So the Pays de la Loire region is in France, obviously. It is located in the northwestern quarter, and it comprises five departments that we work with, and two of them border the Atlantic coast, which is quite important here. It is part of the Loire-Bretagne basin, water basin, which stretches from the center of Brittany. It actually it crosses 5 regions in the total country. It is where the Loire River rises, and it goes through the western tip of Brittany over there. in our country, 43% of rivers are in good ecological status, according to the Water Framework Directive. But in the Loire-Bretagne basin, which you can see here, this figure drops to 24%. And in our region, the Pays de la Loire, the situation is even worse, given only 11% of the region's river and water bodies are in good ecological status, which is the lowest in the whole basin. So the stakes for improving the quality of the region's waterway are very high, and there are many causes of deterioration. For example, the presence of too many obstacles to flow, too many artificial lakes for agricultural purposes, the deterioration and artificialization of river morphology as well, and also anthropogenic pressures as well. So the aim of our project is to make an active contribution to the implementation of the Loire-Bretagne River Basin Management Plan, which is the main instrument for implementing the European Union's water policy in our basin, and thus to contribute to its objective of achieving 50% good ecological status in all water bodies in our region by 2027, which is quite close. So it started in 2020 and it will end in 2027. The project is managed by 3 full-time staff, of which we are, and it has a budget of 15 million euros, which goes fast, half of which comes from European Life Funds. We implement or try to implement 32 actions grouped around 3 key points to mobilize and raise people and raise their awareness on water issues, to improve and increase knowledge about water in our region, and to take direct actions in the river basins through concrete actions to restore the environment and disseminate best practices than there are actually for the moment. The Pays de la Loire Regional Council, of which we're from, is the project leader. It relies on 15 partner beneficiaries who have competencies in the river basins concerned. And the coordination of 15 partners is a huge deal. It is a big part of our project. It requires a lot of coordination, and those partners include, for the main one, the Loire-Bretagne Water Agency and some other local authorities at different levels that I won't bore you with. So now we propose to focus on 4 relevant aspects of our project. The first one is to work on the river basin scale. So in the Pays de la Loire region, most of the water is on the surface, but it can be found in a variety of geographical environments. As part of the LIFE project alone, we're working, as you can see on those pictures, on marshland environments, on the land-sea interface, on the headwaters of catchment areas, on the Loire, which is France's largest river, and on its estuary with the Atlantic Ocean, as you can see on the last picture over there. This variety brings many topics that we have to deal with or to improve. For instance, if there is pollution in the Vendée department marshlands, this can lead to the contamination of oysters, which are farmed along the coastlines, and this has consequences for the quality of the oysters and whether or not they are fit for human consumption, thus impacting the shellfish industry and a lot of people in the region. As we briefly mentioned in the introduction, the regulatory framework for the management of aquatic environments in France is quite heavy and complex, and it applies to our project, obviously, and it involves a large number of players. Each entity has its own part, and it is quite organized, but it brings a lot of people around the table, and it can be challenging to meet everyone's needs in this process. So we wanted to share, to focus on the implementation of certain effective measures. Just to give a quick overview, here are some a selection of indicators that we have to reach by the end of 2027, such as removing artificial lakes or planting lots of hedges. For instance, this action that we have, well, a poor quality picture here, is called removal and adjustment of 15 river structures at the Lancy interface, still in the Vendée department, and it tries to meet some of those indicators. Here we try to take as many infrastructures such as dams and seals as possible, and when it's not always possible, well, we add fish pass, for instance. And on this action, as here we talk about successes and difficulties, we face quite an issue, given that this department has a lot of historical monuments. And here, a mill prevents the ecological continuity on a river along a watercourse, but it is part of a French heritage listed chateau, which is causing an issue. And this illustrates quite well something that you may know if you work in the restoration world, which is the conflict between restoration and heritage preservation. And the last action that I work on, which I find quite interesting, is an integrated approach on the Chéron River. This action, it is an integrated action because it means they work on each of the downgrading aspects of the water course. It includes hydromorphological restoration, such as removal of seals. They remend the water course. We also try to raise awareness among the population on the Chéron River. We work with schools. They created, the syndicate that work specifically on this topic created a journal, a newspaper on this subject that is published twice a year to inform the population of how it's going, what is done. They did a survey to gather people's perception of aquatic environments and how we struggle to restore over there. They also work with the elected representatives to raise their awareness on this topic, and it's not an easy task. And they also work with the agricultural world in order to stop pollution through inputs, which is a huge deal in our region, and to plant hedges. And they did succeed in planting lots of them. And lastly, this action is also working on its governance through several committees, bringing together as many stakeholders and citizens as possible in order to involve everyone. And this action replication is quite a success, given we have 2 new projects that are adapting this specific action on their own rivers, which are nearby, and they are taking advantage of feedback from the partner beneficiary experience. And for the rest, I'll now hand over to my colleague Mathilde.
Thank you, Candice. Hello, everyone. So, the third focus we wanted to share with you concerned the evaluation of the impact of our project. So, several impact measures are expected. The first and most important concerns the impact on water quality. The second concerns the environment in terms of biodiversity and climate change. And the third impact relates to the socio-economic aspect, including the socio-political aspect. We used a 3-step methodology to identify the indicators for our project. Step 1, the indicators were identified in an ideal way. Step 2, the indicators were specified and adapted action by action according to the relevance. And step 3, we finally selected the final indicators based on their ability to be aggregated at the scale of the LIFE project. It was important for us to select those that could be linked to as many actions as possible so that their sum would reflect a project-wide trend. In total, at the current stage of the project, we have selected a set of 47 indicators. For each one, we have systematically identified the baseline situation at the start of the relevant action, and then we plan to measure the final situation at the end of each action and at the end of the project. Here you can see the breakdown of indicators by type. 12 social impact indicators, 19 economic impact indicators. We also plan to focus on the socio-political impact of the project by measuring 3 indicators, including the integration of water issues into regional policies. And finally, to measure the environmental impact, we have selected 13 indicators related to the impact on biodiversity and climate change. Measuring the impact of the project's action is a pretty complex and time-consuming exercise, even if you choose to delegate it to a service provider, as we did. In fact, as you have seen, given the three ambitions of our project, the nature of the actions we are taking are very different. At the beginning of the project, we therefore spent a lot of time with the service provider, explaining our expectations, analyzing and defining the indicators we wanted to keep. Another difficulty is the ability to systematically identify the causal links between our project and the impacts measured. In fact, other external parameters may come into play. We also face the problem of keeping our data up to date, because some of it do not depend on us, but on external observation databases. Finally, the observable effects of an action may require a much longer time frame than the project itself, and then cannot therefore be observed and capitalized on that project level. The fourth and final focus of our project that we wanted to share with you is our ambition to strengthen regional and local governance on water issues. At the local level, as we said earlier, our project is already acting in this way, insofar as each action already has a steering committee that brings together all the stakeholders in the area concerned. We also want to strengthen governance at regional level by focusing on the Loire Water Conference. This is a water parliament that brings together all the stakeholders involved in water issues at the regional level. We would like to contribute to the review of the current format to make it a more participatory body. We are also planning to organize workshops this year with the main elected representatives of this body, and at this workshop we will invite participants to reflect on the mobilization of regional actors on the topic of water. To conclude our presentation, we would like to share with you what we consider to be the main lessons learned from our project experience at this stage. So, as we are currently halfway through our project, we will feel that it is a little early to draw full conclusions. We will be able to say more about this in a while. However, one of the crucial aspects we have already observed for the success of specific restoration actions is the ability to convince and get everyone on board right from the start. On a number of occasions, we have seen that getting all stakeholders on board from the start of an action, be they local residents, economic operators, local councillors, associations, and so on, is essential to its success. We have heard it often during this conference, and this may seem obvious, but in practice for us, it wasn't necessarily so, given the timetable and chronology of our project in relation to the actions of our 14 partners. So it is necessary to anticipate this sufficiently in order to avoid blockages a posteriori, as we have experienced with certain actions. That's why, aware of this pitfall, we place particular emphasis on this point in the call for project we launched in order to include new initiatives in our project. In this sense, the fact that the Life Fund can finance them, the time of human resources in project, is a real added value for our partners. Well, that's the end of our presentation. Thank you for your attention, and we look forward to discussing our project with you during the conference week. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm sorry, we don't have any time for questions on that one. So if you have questions for Candice and Mathilde, please find them later or come to our final session. Okay, and now over to Heinrich. Where are you? Oh, there he is, Heinrich. He's from the Life Bioscape, and we're going to hear all about the stakeholder involvement and how to get landowners on your side. Heinrich.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm going to tell you about my bioscape project, about including landowners and stakeholders to get more nature. I'm working for the Central Denmark region, where we have the projects. In Denmark, it's a very good land for agriculture. We have good soils and opportunities, so 60% of the area is farmland. And together with areas for housing, infrastructure and industry, there's not much left for nature. So that's the purpose of our project. It is to show how to convert agricultural land and how to benefit both landowners, nature and biodiversity, the environment, groundwater protection and climate actions. We work in three areas, three different areas. Each place, it's the local municipality who is project owner. And I'll focus on one of them, which comes later on here. We knew how to get farmers involved and so on, and how to from a practical way to change the things. But we also knew from the start that the communication with the landowners would determine the success of the project. To succeed our efforts, our work had to be done through involvement of landowners and local stakeholders with dialogue, because everything is going on volunteering. And have to get a local ownership to have a lasting chance of this product. One of the areas we work on is a small island of Endelave. It's out of the coastline of Jutland, eastern side. It's a Nature 2000 area and famous for its wild rabbits, which we have 2 places in Denmark. It only has 150 residents, mostly elderly people. And it's a bit special because they're very political there. They have a lot of groupings and fractions over there and not always agree on their interest. So the purpose was to ensure that drinking water, a clean drinking water, and to create cohesive nature in the areas there also. Yeah. The island has a lot of farmland. Half of it is very good farmland in the western part, and it's not interesting for our project. The other half is not so good, and that's where the groundwater is, which we have to protect, and that's where the good nature are, which we want to connect also with this area. Groundwater is only a small abstraction area, and we can see the problems with pesticides and nitrates, so we have to protect it. Another thing we had to do is to create a basis income for the farmers or for the society at all. So we run the project as a multifunctional land consultation project together with the Danish Agricultural Agency as coordinator for this. This was a great advantage to be able to use them, their knowledge and their great experience. To get started, we had a lot of meetings with the citizens, where all the residents of the islands were invited, and we could discuss the things. That was a very complex thing, facing the communication task with a lot of people involved and with all different interests. But just as much as being open-minded, it is important early in the process to make clear what is the overall goal of the things. For the resident, it was quickly clear that something had to be done with the drinking water. But it was worse with the landowners to take out their land and make it into nature. So for a good process, and to take all aspects around the problems, we worked according to a method of mutual gains. That's a negotiation method developed by Harvard University, analyzing hundreds of negotiations. The methods we have changed into a Scandinavian approach called connective negotiations together with a Dutch company. And we started off with all partners to have a 3-day course of this. The method built on 5 essences to make sure you get all the way around the issues and subjects in the project. First one is to focus on interest and not positions. If you focus on interest, you get people's ideas and can build consensus on your negotiations. Keep asking what are the interests to have as much in as possible, and by asking why and how instead of getting the focus on positions. And in this way, you get as much creativity and knowledge of all parties to find the best solutions. Also, building on interest and consensus, you increase the chances of achieving successful negotiation results, even when it seems impossible. We should search for all kinds of solutions and address as many interests as possible. Often we find different interests compromises each other. Neighbors don't speak together and do not know each other's interest always. So in this way, we make the cake bigger instead of each one fighting for its own. Then it talks about BATNA. That's the best alternative to a negotiated agreement. It's important to know your own BATNA if you don't have an agreement, and also important to know the counterparts if the first one can't be carried out. Therefore, you can advantageously ask about others' BATNA, also ask about their interest in being part of the process. And knowing that gives more creative solution, and hereby also enlarge the cake. Keeping knowledge on yourself is traditionally in a negotiation, but instead you should share the knowledge and agree what you need and what you have to find out and how to find out. Perhaps the value can be added to a negotiation process by creating more information and look outside. Also, it's important with the local residents, the landowners or stakeholders. They have knowledge about the area, knowledge that's not always available. And you have to speak to them to get the working process. That also gives a good, long-term basis for collaboration, a good relationships. And that's the last part of the 5 essences, is to build good relationships and sustainable relationships. This helps the process of negotiation and the good feelings and attitudes. And so you can meet later on and agree that it's a good solution, the best solution you could get, and you can have achieved some goals. To create all the things, we had common meetings after the open meetings on the island with the farmers or the landowners. Here we divided them into small groups where they should discuss different topics at tables and with maps. That was important topics we could see they had to discuss, and we learned was important for the project. Each table had a host, and the idea was to give the landowner an opportunity to both challenge their opinions and to have questions answered from an outside expert. It strengthened our credibility and the skeptical landowners that had been in opposition. The outcome was a good dialogue, and we had an opportunity for the landowner that they had a greater common understanding what the project was about and what opportunities they had. Misunderstanding and myths was dispelled, and the landowners opened up towards each other and towards our opinion and plans and interest. After the work, we had time for individual talks with single landowners at the home. That was also important. Many of the landowners were quiet and in large meetings. They didn't share their opinion or ask questions. So it's important that everything is told at the individual farmer talked about, and then he knows that the talk is confidential. Here there was an opportunity to discuss the misunderstandings and get thoughts started with the landowner. So as mentioned, our project is we work together with the what do you call it, agricultural agency, and had a lot of meetings with them to get a good process and to find the land. We agreed with 5 farmers and what we call agricultural consultancy, which they also wrote, and the agency to visit all the farm or the fields on the land or on the island. Here they choose the best one, agreed on the best one, and get that at an index of 100. And every farm or field was measured according to that. That makes a good process, and the farmers could trust what was going on. Later on, the agricultural agency, they made a price for taking out the land or selling or buying the land with the farmers. That was that they took the land with agriculture and with the restrictions they got on it. For the restrictions for the land was no tillings, no fertilizers, and no pesticides use. We helped them with making fence, and they could have ruminants or other things on the land. At the end, everybody agreed on this, and what we had was no complaints because it was an open process, but everybody knew what was happened. Our goals and the money we had in the project was about 35 hectares, 35 to 40 hectares to take out. But with a good process, we had agreements of almost 100 hectares, 3 times as much land, and again with no complaints. Also with the restrictions, it was important that the farmers still could get their agricultural subsidies, and the cap reform was going on, so they could stay there and have a good living for the island. That was it, so thanks for your attention.
Thank you very much, Heinrich. We do have time for a question to Heinrich, if anybody has one. Scanning the audience. No. Oh, yes, my colleague has one.
Yes, I had a Jan Elman. You mentioned the agricultural agencies cooperation. They do only really just calculated the price. Now, how was their attitude according to farmer? Were they positive to the project or rather with the reservation? You know, we have very different approaches of those agricultural agencies regarding our project. So what was your personal opinion in your project?
The farmers,
yes.
generally the farmers had good feelings for them. The agency, as I said, doing all the meetings, together with the meetings, and also with the individual talks. So they knew each other and have good connections. And in that way, at least to what I know, there's good feelings between them. And the farmers felt that they were heard and their attitudes were good, or concerns.
I've got to say, I think we need to replicate that in a number of projects. So whatever your learnings are, Heinrich, you need to let us know. Okay, now we're going over to Ireland and we're going to hear from the first of our integrated projects. So these are much bigger projects, even though some of the ones you've heard about today are already big. These are even bigger. So this is the Wild Atlantic Nature Project. Gary, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Len. You're putting the pressure on now to deliver more since we're a bigger project, but thanks very much. So I'm Gary Goggins and I work with National Parks Wildlife Service, who are the coordinating partner on Life IP Wild Atlantic Nature. So I'm here with my colleague Julie Reynolds. Some might have heard her talk yesterday. And Derek, we left at home to do the work while we're enjoying ourselves in Tartu, so don't tell him how much fun it's been. So the integrated project we have is focused on the prioritised action framework, which is a particular focus on blanket bog habitat in the west of Ireland. So it's one of the 360 peatland focused projects. So we've got, for a bit of context, I suppose is important, but we've got 35 SACs come under the project, which covers about 260,000 hectares up in northwest Ireland from Galway to Donegal. But for us, about 80%, this is the typical landscape you will see, very rural and marginalised land with, low enough agricultural value. But about 80% of the land area that we target is privately owned and it's actively farmed. So we've probably got about 10,000 farmers in our project area. So if we want to deliver the conservation restoration that's required at the scale that is necessary, we absolutely have to be working with farmers as, primary stakeholders, because they're on the front line, they're managing the land day in, day out, and for us, we would see it as the only way to actually deliver on our objectives. So we are a big project, but we're relatively new in terms of an integrated project. We started in 2021, so we're 3.5 years into a 9-year project, but we've got a fair bit done so far. And I guess in starting off, and we think about, well, what's our vision for the project, and what are we trying to, at a very high level, what are we trying to achieve here? And, we came up with this kind of sentence of delivering high quality habitats, and our focus is on the quality of the habitats all the time, but adapting to the local context and being sensitive to the area you're working and the people you're working with. And then also that we look to deliver for the environment, but also for farmers and local communities. And this is a very important point, that we need to deliver the environmental benefit in order to achieve what we want to achieve, but we cannot do that without also delivering the social benefit. So if we've got the environment benefit, but without the social benefit for the farmers, landowners, communities, it just won't work. You won't get buy-in, you won't keep people on board. And if you've got the social benefit without the environmental improvements, well, you'll find yourself with no funding fairly quick as well. So we need to balance those two. And then when we consider our positionality, so where would we see the project sitting in terms of the social and institutional context in which we work? We kind of came up with this. It's a bit of a back of the envelope Venn diagram, but so like what's important here in terms of delivering conservation restoration? Well, the policy is very key, because there are a number of policies impacting on land use, from agriculture policy, but all our climate, water, nature policies as well, energy policy, social policy, etc., all impacts on how we use our land. And then the practices that we see on the ground when we drive around, when we look out our windows, well, what do we see happening in terms of farming, forestry, tourism, turf cutting, etc., and then the area and the place. And this all comes together to kind of shape what we see in terms of drivers and outcomes of what we see happening. So when we think then, okay, like where do you start then to tackle a big issue at conservation at this scale? So when we go back to the policy, the biggest impact on land use across Europe is the common agriculture policy, and especially when you're working with farmers. So we put that, farmers were our primary focus to start with, and then that, of course, leads to, well, okay, we need to target the common agriculture policy. So we were quite lucky, building on lessons from innovation studies, etc., would tell you that the best innovations are ones that build on what came previously and don't try and invent the wheel, etc. So we took that to heart, and we built on about 25 years of experience of delivery of results-based agri-environment programs in Ireland. And, from the Burn programme back in the 2000s, the Burn Life, which was funded in the Life project, to a number of EIPs in Harrier, and especially the Pearl Mussel project, where Derek had worked previously. So we took the model that was developed in the Pearl Mussel project, and we were able to implement it very quickly then in Wild Atlantic Nature. So For the results-based, payment scheme, I'd say that most people know the kind of general ethos, but farmers' agri-environment payments are directly related to the environmental quality of the land. So the better the ecological quality, the higher the payment the farmer receives. In Wild Atlantic Nature, we look at a bundling of ecosystem services in terms of the assessment of the environmental quality. So we're using proxies to capture biodiversity, water quality, and climate regulation. So that enables us to, integrate multiple policies and also deliver on multiple policy objectives using the one program. So it's a very nifty system. Also in Ireland, we tend to use this hybrid model where farmers get a results-based payment directly related to the ecological quality, but we also have an actions payment available to farmers. So if a farmer gets a low score on any given field for any reason, they have access to financial and technical support to address the issue, So the farmer might say, well, what do I have to do to improve my score? And here your scorecard becomes your management tool. You say, well, you go back to your scorecard. Where did you not get full marks? These are the things you can address. And it's completely voluntary for the farmer then what actions they do and how they do them, once it's within the law and they're not causing damage, and we'll fund and assist the farmer there. So it's a results-based payment with a voluntary actions component. And so we implemented it at the landscape level, so targeting the entire SAC plus the contiguous area based on the water catchment. So what we end up, every red dot here, this is a corner of one of the SACs, but every red dot represents a scorecard. So there's data gone in for every red dot there. So the scorecard's got multiple questions and there's multiple variables in there. So we've got a ton of data based on, a high-level ecological assessment, a rapid assessment of the quality of the SACs. So it also helps us to quickly understand the threats and pressures there and to target the actions where they need to be targeted as well. Of course, it's voluntary for farmers, but that doesn't stop us calling, ringing them up, going, meeting them, suggesting, would you like to do this, could you do this, etc., etc. So the project only started in 2021, but we already had 187 farmers in the results-based program by June of that year, so it was pretty intense start to the project. Hit the ground running would be an underestimate, but so we had a results-based for 8 SACs with 823 farmers. It represents an uptake of about 85% or more, so farmers are very interested in this model. We trained farm advisors who were nominated by their farmers, and we had over 63,000 hectares of land under the program and 3 million in farmer payments. Well, I guess with the eyes on the prize the whole time was trying to get results-based into the CAP strategic plan to show that it could be delivered at scale, etc. So we were working very closely with Department of Agriculture and others to bring these lessons into the CAP strategic plan for Ireland. And a plug there for a paper that's under review at Land Use Policy, which tells you all about the results-based pilot that we had. So now in Ireland, in the new CAP strategic plan, we've got a results-based component in the high nature value areas, which is delivered by 8 acres cooperation project teams, represented by the different colours on the map. So there's 20,000 farmers now getting their payments based on results, which covers about 85% of the Natura 2000 network. So it's a massive change from the previous model, which was just flat rate payments for everybody for delivering prescribed actions. So now at the national level, we have this mechanism for conservation measures, restoration actions at scale, at the landscape scale. So for us in the project, the next step is, okay, how do we build on that? And we started into that straight away. So I've just got a few examples here of different initiatives that we have initiated to build on the results-based component, working with the guys who are implementing the CAP strategic plan. And a lot of this has been farmer-driven and farmer-led, actually, but the first example is Natura Communities initiative that we set up. So this came about when a farmer approached us, and it was actually, he had invasive species on his land, Rhododendron ponticum, and he knew with the results-based payments being embedded in the CAP strategic plan that him and his neighbours were all going to lose out on payments because they had rhododendron, and it was something he'd been trying to tackle by himself for years, and he wasn't able to. So we ran a little pilot to look at tackling it at the landscape level, at the catchment where he lived, etc. Worked out very well. So we ended up training local farmers and other members of the local community on restoration employing them, etc., and then built out from that to look at other peatland restoration techniques to meet this demand for restoration that was driven by this new results-based model. So we now have 35 full-time operatives across 3 different groups that cover 7 SECs. In the Natura Communities model, there's €3 million already been spent on that, funded by national parks. We also have a restoration retrofit pilot where we're trying to deal with the issue of turf cutting and the use of turf as a solid fuel in homes. So farmers are now looking at the scorecard saying, well, we're losing payments because the land is damaged from turf cutting. And we've developed this pilot where the farmer can enter a home retrofitting pilot, get the home retrofitted so they no longer need to use the turf as a fuel. So you're providing an alternative fuel source. And in return, the farmer restores the Turberry area and all their lands and signs a contract to refrain from turf cutting. So it's a new way of looking at tackling a problem that's been a thorn in the side, I would say, of the government for a long time. Also looking at delivering large-scale restoration projects, bringing money outside of CAP, which of course the farm organisations really like if you're bringing new money into the system for delivering restoration, because CAP cannot pay for everything. So we've brought in 15 million funding through the Shared Island Initiative, Department of Taoiseach. We're a partner on Waterlands. There are several people here from that project where we're doing 1,000 hectares of restoration in one of our SACs, etc. So we've got multiple other projects on the go there. We're also working on developing a network of demonstration farms across our target area, so with the Acre CP teams, etc. So the idea is that no farmer has to travel too far to see some restoration on a piece of land that looks like the piece of land that he owns. Can talk to the farmers, peer-to-peer learning, etc. Absolutely vital. And of course, to deliver all this, which is, better, bigger, what was it, Lynn? But it's happening very faster. Yeah. So then you end up with capacity gaps very quickly, across, in farmers' knowledge, in scientists, in government and policy, etc. So we're always looking at those, trying to get ahead and trying to build capacity. So we've got, training, education programs and networks, which I don't have time to go into, but, just trying to, 3 minutes perfect, deal with all those issues together. And I guess one strategy that we do have is we're always looking, because we are a project and we're a finite project, we might be a long one, but we won't be here forever. So we're always thinking, okay, we test, we bring something to a certain scale, where does it go after that? Who can take this on and who can deliver this in the long term? Who can scale it out? Where might that money come from, etc. So we're working on that kind of strategic thinking level the whole time as well. Thankfully, my time is nearly up, so I don't have to explain this diagram, but I mean, some of the key points here well, 2 key points I would make is that we've got a number of policy drivers that are driving conservation and restoration. Birds and Habitats Directive is our focus, but also Water Framework Directive, Biodiversity Action Plan, Climate Action Plan, Common Agricultural Policy, etc. So there are multiple policy drivers for conservation and restoration. And we would see results-based payments and payments for ecosystem services as a tool that can be used in order to, as an economic driver for delivering that restoration to meet our policy objectives as well. And so as farmers get more money for ecosystem services, that creates a demand for more conservation restoration, which can respond to the requirements to meet our policy objectives, etc. So some key messages would say that first, a well-designed and a well-supported results-based payments scheme. They provide improved alternative to prescription approaches. We have a lot of evidence from Ireland. And I mean, all our scorecards and terms and conditions and information books and everything are on our website if people want to learn more about the results-based payment schemes. And we find that farmers, farm advisors, policymakers, they like results-based payment schemes. They do support them. And, the waters people say, yeah, that can help deliver our objectives. The biodiversity people say, yeah, that can help deliver our objectives, etc. But you do need consideration, the social and institutional context, and, local adaptability is vital in order to be successful. We know from Ireland that upscaling is possible via the CAP strategic plan. You might have heard James Moran's presentation yesterday about that. And I mean, if there's one single big take-home message is that results-based payment schemes can be an effective mechanism for delivering both small and large-scale conservation and restoration. Shene, Garamila, thank you.
Thanks, Gary. We can take one question for Gary if anybody's got a question for Gary. Yes, there's one here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gary. That was really interesting. It's actually really inspiring to see that results-based payments do work and are acceptable to farmers and policymakers. I just wanted to ask about how you, and apologies, this is the UK sort of example. We've tried to get in results-based payments as a way of ensuring you get environmental restoration, but there is a pushback from DEFRA because they feel they can't measure results-based payment easily and effectively. And I wondered how in Ireland, whether scientists and conservation organisations have helped create that baseline and that way of measuring it, and how you might be able to sort of share that sort of knowledge.
Yeah, well, it's a fairly big question for
Sorry.
1 minute answer, but we have a long history of results-based payment schemes in Ireland, so it's about 25 years or so, and as James Moran would have said, he would have been hoping results-based payment schemes would have come into the Common Agriculture Policy in 2013, 2 cycles ago, rather than now, you know. But it's been an iterative process, I would say, of pilot projects and dotted around different parts of the country so that more people get a flavour of what results-based payment schemes are, what they can deliver, and then the projects growing each time. So more farmers, more people involved, more policymakers involved, and building to that level. And I mean, on the other side of it, if we look at, I was going to say exogenous threats, but it's not exogenous really, but if you look at the quality of our environment and it's deteriorating, I mean, we're at a stage where most of our indicators are going in the wrong direction. So you have got taxpayers all over Europe looking at the amount of money being spent in the Common Agriculture Policy and policymakers and saying, well, hang on a minute, why are we spending this money when it's not delivering for the environment? And, the pressure, the day of giving, the old way was that the agri-environment payments to farmers was soft money for doing nothing, But that day is gone. Now people are looking for farmers to deliver for their agri-environment payments. So I think that pressure coming with all the evidence that we have over the years that results-based payments can deliver and that farmers like them, etc., just got to a point where I suppose there was enough momentum there was enough expertise, experience there. And to be honest, there wasn't a great alternative. Like business as usual was running out of road at the same time, I think. But we can chat more about it again later. And my colleague Barry O'Donoghue from National Parks is here as well, and he's a fountain of knowledge on all things results-based as well. So nab Barry as well.
Perfect. Yeah. Thank you very much, Gary. 2 things. There is a results-based payment seminar tomorrow afternoon, I think, or tomorrow anyway. So find that one in your programmes if you're interested. And for anybody who is interested, the next live platform meeting is on results-based payment schemes. It will be in Leuven in Belgium, 9th to the 11th of October. If anybody is interested, please come and see us on the live desk and we can give you further details. So, on to our final set of speakers, Janine and Holger, who are going, I can't give you a live project title for this because they're going to give you a tour of 6 live projects. So this is definitely about learning and experience and upscaling. Janine, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Yep, good, great. So thank you, Lynn, for the introduction. I'm very happy about the possibility to share our long-term experiences in implementing nature conservation measures with you. And maybe that helps for the future to upscale restoration measures like this here. So at first I would like to give you an overview. Where is Brandenburg? and where we work. I work at the Naturschutz von Brandenburg, which is a public foundation which is located in the federal state of Brandenburg, which is in the north east of Germany. You can see the red marked area. This Brandenburg is the area around the capital of Germany, Berlin. And Brandenburg has the size of Belgium and has twice as much inhabitants as Estonia. So what do we do in our foundation? We promote nature conservation measures by third parties. We own land, around 8,000 hectares, and we implement conservation actions. So we will tell you about that. Brandenburg is a quite nature-rich area. We have something about 25% of the area is protected land. So we're quite lucky, I think, for German things. The company has 180 employees, and we own more or less the rangers which take care of our large protected areas, which are about 100 persons. So, to the live projects. We have been implementing live projects, or my colleague Holger and me have been implementing live projects since 2005. That means more than 18 years of life experience. You need to know that Brandenburg has 600 Natura 2000 sites in total. We worked up to now in something about 800 of these Natura 2000 sites. You can see on the map the blue dots, which mark all these Natura 2000 sites. That means as well that we implemented 500 actions on the ground and dealt with more than 10,000 people in these sites. So now, we took the slogan and made it, changed it a bit in bigger, longer, more, and Westwind, because that's the experience we made. We started, as I said, 18 years ago with the Inland Salt Meadow project, which were something about 5.5 years. And we ended up with a duration at the current project with Union crosses about 10 years. So as the same pattern is with the investment, Maya said it before, we started with 1.8 million euro and ended up with 11.5 million euro. And that's mainly because the project becomes more and more complex. And with this long duration and much money, you have the possibility to make the work more effective, because you enlarge the measures when the people see what you have already achieved at the sites, and as well, if you haven't done anything right, we won't say we did it wrong, but sometimes that's the case. The sites doesn't work, or the measures doesn't work out what we expected, then you have the possibility to redirect the actions and come to a good result. So, and it's not, restoration is not about nature, we heard it before, but it's, I think, all about the people you work with. So, restoration is a human adventure. As you all know, probably it is very important there's the need to get people involved and to explain them what you want, but it's rather important to listen to them. So it's not only about dealing with knowledge and experience, it's also about dealing with feelings and emotion, and that's, in my experience, often the harder part. So, and implementing a restoration is not without risk, you probably all know.
Yeah, thank you, Janine. My name is Holger. I've been involved in mostly all of this projects, and it's as Janine said, it's about people getting involved, and we have heard it in the conference already from many speakers that restoration is about restoring nature, but also about restoring trust between people. And that's what we have learned throughout our projects. And I don't want to stay between you and your lunch, but I want to give you maybe some take-home messages from our projects. And the first lesson comes from communication, and we have heard it yesterday, also from Ryan in the panel here, that listening is really important. Listening to the people, and also from Henrik in his presentation, listening to the people, what they think about these actions. So listen before you talk. But sure, you have to make your case understood, but you can choose the way you do it, and that's quite important for the success of the projects and also of the restoration business we want to roll out. So involve trustworthy people. Yeah, that's what most of you do, and also avoid unnecessary communication. So I sometimes have the feeling there's a little bit of that also. So second, and that's what we heard from Florian and on Tuesday, if we want to implement the nature restoration law, we also have to think about procedures. Yeah, to make it faster, all the story of restoration, we have to look after the procedures, also in the Natura 2000 habitat, and also especially connected to water-related activities. So the procedures sometimes lead to getting stuck in our projects in some cases. So I think together with all the legal people here, the lawyers also in the SERE, we have to think about how we can come to smooth procedures to make restoration faster. And that's, I think, what we have learned, especially to the COVID time, that procedures really matter. And then restoration relies on trust. Relies on trust between the people involved and affected by the restoration activities. And you see these two guys, these are our colleagues from the Naturwacht Rangers. So one has already decided to pass the bridge, but the other is a little bit waiting. So I think that's a good picture, that you have to build the bridges, but you also have to go over it. And to build this trust, to work together in your projects. And as we have also heard, cooperation is important. So and we are very lucky to have this cooperation on different levels. We have heard about the local level, but also in the science area. And Maya has talked about solidarity between projects and between countries. So we took a lot of advantage from Swedish and Danish projects about the Unio Crassus aspects, and how can we adapt our own best practice restoration measures, learn from each other, and also cooperate to get better results through cooperation. And then it might be obvious, but it has to be said. And we heard it also from our Estonian colleagues, which upscaled restoration, but mostly on state land. So we have to involve also private landowners, and no land, no restoration. That's what we have learned during our project. We have done quite a lot of restoration also on private land, but it's hard. It's really hard. Not really to convince them, but to allow them to share your opinion about restoration and join you in the restoration effort. So this is one lucky area close to Berlin. You probably heard about this Geiger factory from Tesla. So it's really close by, but we could save it 10 years ago for restoration and also for peatland peatland restoration. Yeah, and we have learned from our Estonian colleagues this grassland restoration, after doing some initial works on itself because all the species are there. But in our situation in Central Europe, sometimes help is needed also for species, and we need this active reintroduction of species to improve the quality of the habitats. So habitat restoration in many cases is not enough, but we have also to reintroduce species to keep or improve the quality. So, and that all leads us to this picture. Yeah. The upscale. So we took some letters from all of these words. You could tell the story in different ways. So we decided to do it in this way. You can tell the story in different ways, but most important is to get people involved, to make them part of the project and make them part of the restoration of activities you want to roll out. So, and our final thanks is to my colleagues for the trust and cooperation, and also not really an advice, but keep listening, keep curious, keep asking what others expect from restoration, and thank you for your attention and for your listening.
Okay, I know it's lunchtime, but one quick question if we've got it. We can take one quick question. It's jolly hard to see everybody here. Anybody got a question? No, you're all starving, I know. Okay, thank you very much, Holger and Janine. Okay, and just to remind everybody that our next session is tomorrow, same time, same place, same actors, different speakers. Please join us for Scaling Up and Speeding Up tomorrow. Thank you very much, everybody.